And just like that, we are about to wrap up the first day of the Maker Summit 2 2021. And giving the perfect closing note for the day to stage C is our next session, which addresses one of those sectors which the pandemic came as the biggest opportunity to do, which is SaaS. When you work in a sector that has not only grown leaps and bounds in value, but is also home to some of the biggest names from the startup ecosystem, it becomes imperative that you stand out. But how do you structure product marketing function in SaaS? What are the influencers that you can leverage? And how does data analytics help you in high growth product marketing? Who better to answer all these questions than the firm that was founded in 1996 and has been both bootstrapped and profitable since? Please welcome the VP of Marketing and Customer Experience at Zoho, Pravul Singh, who has not only had more than 13 years of experience of marketing and customer experience, but has also 9 years of remote working experience. So glad to have you here, Pravul. Pravul, I think, yeah, you're back.
Hi, Nishay. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everyone else. I'm just trying to figure out if you can hear me. Can someone raise a hand, or Nishay, can you confirm if I'm audible? All right, thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity here, Nishay, and thank you for putting this summit together. With my experience of running product marketing at Zoho, my experiences here across products and with the brand now, I want to put this small presentation together and talk about this function that is very popular, very hot, very in demand, called product marketing. I would start with an interesting anecdote of how it started for me personally. And let me put this presentation on and then, yeah. So I joined Zoho in 2012 as a product marketing manager, having never done that before. I had never worn a product marketing hat before this. But like a lot of people, I had a sense of what it means. And of course, over the last 8-9 years, a lot has changed, but there's still things that haven't. And I come from a background of running a small agency here in Delhi, where I'm based. And after having run that agency for about 4 years, I decided to move on and work on a product. And that's when Zoho happened. And all these years, I've learned one thing, that product marketing is very loosely defined in the industry. And that's also because, at least when I started, there weren't too many product marketers around to engage with, discuss. There weren't any such forums, the one that we are engaging on today, to actually come up with a clear, defined role of what is a job or a role of a product marketer and what typically a product manager takes care of. These roles were always overlapping, they still are. And I think I want to use this opportunity to sort of given some clarity on how the product marketing role is different from a product manager role and what it involves, why is it important. And for those of you who are starting up and those who are working as product marketers in different B2B companies, I think I would like to use this opportunity to talk about how we structure product marketing at Zoho. How has my journey been so far, having worked as a product marketing manager, built teams, taken products from zero to a couple of $1 million, and seen how we at Zoho look at product marketing. So if you look at product marketing on LinkedIn and look for how many people actually have that on their roles, interestingly, there were over 11 million search results. This is a recent search result. I don't know what the numbers are today, but that's actually very interesting. More than 11 million people have product marketing on their profile somewhere. That says a lot about the demand of this role in the market today and the demand of a product marketer when you go live, when you go to market with a B2B SaaS product. Now, if you look at marketing at a SaaS company, what does it look like? And of course, different teams and different companies will have slightly different structures around organizing their marketing teams. But if you look at broadly how this sits, in the overall scheme of things at a company today, is there's a brand marketing team. If the company is large enough to have one. Then there is product marketing, which we're going to talk about today. There's this demand generation team, which is involved with creating demand for the products and services that the B2B company offers. There is events team or the field marketing team, depending on the kind of market you're looking at, your average deal size, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, there's a marketing ops team, which is essentially taking care of your marketing infrastructure, be it how your web pages are served, which A/B testing tool do you use, how does your analytics stack up. All of that is essentially marketing ops, and also managing your entire funnel from a analytics and technical standpoint. These are typical roles at most marketing teams. Now, in some teams, all of this probably would be split between 2 or 3 people, maybe one person to begin with. But in a fairly large company, these are independent teams working together, reporting into a CMO or a VP of marketing or a director of marketing, depending on how the company is structured. And between brand and product marketing sits what is again hot, content marketing. The reason it sits there is because the two kinds of content that a typical B2B company creates or should create. One is content which is closer to the product. Think of use cases, think of customer stories, think of any typical workflows that your product helps solve. And then there is content at the brand level, which is what are the ethos of the company and the values and the culture, and what differentiates you as a company, and what are the core principles that the company stands for, and so on and so forth. Both essentially come as content marketing and sit between the two. And again, the team can be split based on how big the company is, but pretty much that's how they're all structured. I want to drive slightly deeper into product marketing today. Of course, we can talk about each of these. We can talk about each of these roles and have a session on each of them. But for today and for the sake of time, I would dive deeper into product marketing, also because that's a topic pretty close to my heart. So why is product marketing important? Let's start with that. Why don't we just start with getting a digital marketer and optimize SEO and try to do things or maybe growth hack into it, right? Well, it works, but not always. And when you are going to market with a product which you like to believe that solves a need, there is a demand for it, and you're trying to map the demand with the customer and with your product, that's where product marketing plays an important role, right? And how does it help to get started with product marketer being your first marketing person? Well, it helps with better marketing efficiency. I'll come to that. I'll come to why am I saying so and why it makes sense. But let's look at why product marketing. Well, when you are going to market with a product, it is important for you to understand who is using your product and why. I'll give an example. Think of a product as simple as a bottle of water, right? You could be selling packaged water, which is $20 a liter, or you could be selling a packaged water, which is $200 a liter. We all know both are available in the market. And essentially, it's all water. Maybe different kinds of water, but essentially all water. Both solve the same purpose of quenching your thirst. And so from a product marketing perspective, it's important to understand who is your audience, who is using the product, why are they using it. And clearly, the audience for a 20 rupee water bottle is very different from an audience for a 200 rupee water bottle, right? So that's why product marketing is important. Next, how do buyers describe your product? Now, sitting in a closed meeting room when we as product marketers or product managers or founders talk about our product, we're often very proud of what we have built and we're trying to solve the next problem in the world, and we know, we get it, we just get it. But do customers also get it the same way? That's the question. How are our prospective buyers describing this product when it's in their hand? If my prospective buyer cannot differentiate, why should I buy a 200 rupee water bottle when it looks, works, and pretty much appeals the same way as a 20 rupee bottle? There is a problem. So we have to differentiate that, right? I'm using the word differentiate because that's where we're getting to. And product marketing stands very closely with the differentiation of products. We'll get to that in future slides. So how are my buyers describing the product? That's a very important question. And as a product marketer, I'm responsible to answer that question, to get a correct answer to that question as well. Now, what's the story me as a product marketer or you as a product marketer are telling to your audience to put your product before them? Are they buying in your story? Is it strong and compelling enough? Why should somebody spend 200 rupees on a bottle of water? Even if they can, it's not about whether they can or not. The fact that you're going after an audience that is willing to spend 200 rupees on a bottle, that's given. But why should they spend money on that? There may be other products in the market which are priced similarly. There's not just one company that sells water bottle at 200 rupees. There are different companies. Very aspirational, brand-led content and marketing that you see. The positioning is very, very different. So what's your story? Why should people buy your product? This is, again, a question that makes product marketing very, very interesting. And if you see the answers for all these three questions, you would understand why and how it makes marketing efficient. Think about it. Without having answered these questions clearly for yourself, for your customers, for your team, for your CEO, for your sales teams, without having done this, if you just put in money on a SEM campaign or put in money to optimize certain keywords to rank up on search results or something or the other, right? You'd be spending money to get people who are not aligned with your product because you don't know who's using your product and why. And if you are attracting them, you don't know how they're describing your product. And then you don't really have a story that would resonate with your audience. Without having done all of that, if you're putting in money to advertise or promote or market your product, I don't think that's a great way to look at B2B marketing, at least, right? Or even B2C for that matter. So product marketing helps you with, or helps us with, better marketing efficiency, right? So what exactly is product marketing, right? The simplest example is, or a representation is, it's an intersection of product, marketing, and sales, right? And your goal is, as a product marketer, to bring a product to market and essentially help in driving the demand and the usage of the product. Simply put, in a slightly more detailed outlook, a product marketer is deciding your positioning and messaging, helping you launch the product, take it to the market. But not just that, even internally, a product marketer is ensuring that the salespeople, the people who are going to sell it, and the customers understand it exactly the way the product managers and the product marketers and the CEO and the company understands it. So they bridge that gap. That's a very challenging and very interesting role. And sometimes that challenge and that interesting bit of it gets diverted or diluted in the nuance of trying to ship things. We'll get to that as well. I would love to talk about how a typical day of a product marketer looks. But it's important to understand how the role is defined and what it takes to be a product marketer. So what does a product marketer do? It was good. I mean, we're talking about understanding the customer persona and understanding how a product is defined to a customer. How do we go to market? All of that. But what does it look like? I mean, what do you do as a product marketer? Well, a lot of things. A good product marketer, to begin with, is someone who can craft a story, okay, or a narrative, and that can be communicated internally to your colleagues and teams and up the ladder, down the ladder, anybody and everybody who's involved in that product's business. Communicated in a tweet, in a blog, in a typical press release, ensuring that it is understood and accepted by everyone, all the way from the CEO to the salespeople who are facing the customer. across all formats and channels, and be it social media, a presentation, a demo, a webinar, a print ad somewhere, all of that. So that's what a product marketer is typically obsessed about, doing it every day for a product, for a feature, for a release, for anything that the team feels that the product is a good solution for. Now, let's get into slightly more detail or the specifics of what a product marketer works on. So a product marketer understands the product. So that's one of the key requisites of getting to do good product marketing, is understanding the product really, really well. And with that, it's not just about understanding what problem the product is solving, but the details of it. For example, what are the features of your product? If you are selling an email marketing solution, what kind of features do you have? How do they stack against the competition in the, or what do you have that others don't have, or what do others have, or your top competitor has? You don't have that. So not just understanding the features, but also the lack of features. You may be an early entrant, you may be a late entrant in the market. Depending on the situation, you may or may not have the flexibility or the advantage to have all the features that your competitor has. And based on that, you may be further segmenting your audience or looking at a niche. We'll talk about it a little later. But for now, just think of a product marketer understands the product features and the lack of features really, really well. Similarly, a product may not have certain features, but as a product marketer, can you come up with workarounds to address those needs, those use cases? That's also a very important factor in understanding your product really well. And then if it's a typical SaaS product, which has a marketplace, has APIs, so understanding of how your product can interplay with other products in the market, solving use cases which are beyond the scope of your product are also very, very important from a product perspective. Next is customers. So what types of customers do you have? Which industries, what segments, and what are their needs? I mean, if you look at CRM, for example, and if I look back at Zoho, long before I joined in 2012, some of the CRM happened several years before that at Zoho. And back in the year 2005, 6, 7, if you look at our typical customer was not someone who's already using one of the biggest CRMs in the market. Our typical customers were those who were using spreadsheets to manage their records. That's what they're using, a spreadsheet, and you're trying to tell a story that, hey, drop that spreadsheet, move to a CRM, it will make your lives easy. So that's your narrative. So you have to understand the kind of customer that you have. Today, our typical customer is not essentially, at least not for Zoho CRM, they're not essentially using spreadsheets and looking to move to Zoho CRM. They may use, let's say, Zoho Begin, which is a CRM for smaller customers today. So understanding their needs, again, is very, very important. And then why is it important for your customers? What you're offering, do they really need that? Do they value what you're offering? So that understanding is also very important. And then depending on who you're selling to, what kind of solution it is, and the industry that you're selling into, understanding the buying cycles and the patterns, how long, and the deal size, how long does it typically take to get through the customer, get through the door, so understand how long will your sales team be able to convert a hot lead. All that is also very, very important. It's not just about building the customer persona. We've read it everywhere, right? But it doesn't stop there. It goes much deeper. So building cycles and buying cycles and patterns of your customers is also equally important. And then as you sort of dip your feet into the market of the product that you're selling, understanding who are the gatekeepers in the company. Is it the CIO or is it the CMO who's your ideal customer? Who are you selling it to? Or are you selling it to the VP of sales, right? Who is buying that CRM in that company? It's important to know that, right? Everything revolves around that. The kind of content you'll create, the kind of outreach you will do, the kind of events you will attend. a lot gets defined by understanding your gatekeepers, your influencers, and decision makers in the market, in the company, and in that space. Moving on, understanding the market itself, right? Your competitors. Who's your biggest competitor? And by biggest, it doesn't really mean by size. There also has to be relevance. Maybe you're creating an email marketing software, but you are focused on a particular niche. Or let's say you are building a CMS to publish websites, but your focus is not any random business, but you're focusing towards creators or designers. So who are the competitors in that space? So narrowing down your competition, understanding who your competitors are, what are the alternatives, right? If you are selling a video conferencing software, there would be some obvious alternatives that you're competing with, but then there would be some niche players, right? Or maybe there's an opportunity to create a niche, right, where you see an opportunity and you want to grab that. So that's also equally important from a market standpoint. And then the market dynamics. A lot of things changed last year because of COVID. The whole dynamics of the market, people started working remotely. There was a sudden surge of remote working tools. We saw it ourselves of how suddenly there was a surge in some of our products in terms of usage, in terms of purchases, in terms of new customers. So market dynamics can change due to various factors. So understanding that is also very important. And that's how you define your complete strategy around product marketing. Now that we've sort of got into the specifics, right, let's take it further. Let's take it further into what product marketing then gets into. Segmentation. Very, very important thing when you're trying to sell something, based on the industry. Is your product better suited for manufacturing industry, for real estate industry, for pharma, for IT services, whatever it is? Understanding that the better you segment your messaging, your ad copy, your ad groups that you create, anything and everything that you do, the landing pages that you create, the better you segment, the better they behave or perform or convert. So that's, again, very important thing in life of a product marketer. Again, based on industry, size, geography. I mean, the moment geography comes into picture, it's not just about translation, it's about localization. What works in Australia may not work in Middle East. So having that understanding of who you are creating this for, this piece of content, this ad, this messaging, this webinar, this product demo, who is it for, is very, very important, right? And product reality, of course, is very, very important. You might want to believe that you've built the best video conferencing software, but you know that you have some ground to cover. You're not the best in the market, either from a technology standpoint, from a brand perspective, from whatever it is. Understanding that reality and segmenting your audience based on that is very, very helpful, right? Now, what pretty much it means is targeting what you do, where you do, okay? Defining the right positioning and messaging based on these criteria: the industry, size, geography, product reality, etc. And then getting your pricing and SKU right. And this is my favorite bit of it. So think of something like Amazon Prime in India, or Spotify, or Apple Music. I'm sure many of us use one or several of these services that I mentioned. Now, if you look into their pricing in India versus the pricing in the US, there's about 10x difference, right? It's the same product, essentially. You have access to pretty much very similar features or capabilities or whatnot, but they're priced very differently based on the geography in this case, right? So it's about segmentation, right? So having that plans, that feature, sometimes features are also very, very geographic. Some things work in some geographies while some things don't. So understanding that differentiation of what works in which geography is very, very important, right? And similarly, the plans and the pricing, all that. So the entire packaging of the product, is defined by how you segment that in that particular industry, geography, product reality, all of that. So what are the responsibilities now? Let's talk about the meat of it, in terms of what people like to call, what are your KRAs, or what are you responsible for, and things like that, right? So to start off, when you join as a product marketer on a team, or when you are the first product marketer on a team, or you're starting a business, you are the product manager and the marketer, whatever the case is, the first thing is to do a research about the market itself, right? The products in the market, the market itself, companies, analysts, if your product is in an area where the analysts exist and influence decisions, the buying decisions. How does media react to this market? Is it a hyped market, or it's a market that a lot of people don't care about? Media is not interested to write about it, cover about it. Or is there only one player that media writes often about? All those nitty-gritties of competitive research is one of the key responsibilities of a product marketer, right? Like I said, positioning and messaging is another key one, and you probably have heard it before as well. So all the way from choosing a market category, differentiating yourself well enough, your product, communicating the value that your product or services offer, right? Be it software or be it that bottle of water, right? Let me grab some water meanwhile. But yeah, so understanding that positioning and messaging for your product is very, very important. And then not just understanding it and explaining it, creating decks, presentations, toolkit, demos, all that for your internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, which includes customers, partners, all of that, right? Next is sales enablement. So as a product marketer, you also help sales and customer success teams to do their job better. Now, one would argue that why is sales enablement part of product marketing? Aren't the sales team good enough to figure out how to sell? Well, they are, but typically in a B2B SaaS marketing function, when sales and marketing play together, they play well. So you help your sales team understand how is our product better or different, things that we don't have. Basically, you are equipping them, you're preparing them to do sales better, right? You're bringing answers to questions that they would get asked by customers. You're asking it ahead of time and preparing them, giving them right answers, smart answers, reasonable answers to those questions, right? Providing them comparison sheets, for example, right? Things like that. Creating resources, training materials, all of that. Pricing is again a responsibility of a product marketer. In many companies and teams, though, we've seen it's a shared responsibility between a product marketer and a product manager. Arguably, either of them should be qualified to take a call on this, but they usually play together on this as well. So how do you segment them, and how do you define the pricing slabs and all of that? Is again something that product marketers play a role in, and also comparison sheets for sales team to look at and be prepared to answer a question from a prospect when they're looking to buy your product but have questions about pricing and are looking at some of your competitors alongside. Product marketer also works on customer stories, which are known as case studies and testimonials. And how do you create a customer story? Well, people who are actually working closely with customers are often your salespeople, right? So you work with sales to get customer references and contacts, and you build a story with them. So you see how this is like a handshake where marketers help salespeople do their job better, help them close a lead, a deal, help them with resources and training materials, which is called sales enablement. And in return, they often get good customer references to create those powerful customer stories. So that's how the relationship is established between sales and marketing, often in a B2B SaaS space. So essentially creating custom stories, and then if you are large enough, and depending on the kind of customers you cater to and how you've segmented them, case studies can be segmented by geographies and industry and the size and so on and so forth. Product release, and that's a big one. If you talk to a product marketer who's done product marketing even for a couple of years, they'll tell you a lot about the release cycles and how weekends become weekdays oftentimes, because you're often chasing a constantly moving target. There are too many variables in the equation. Things are changing. Something is ready, something is not. It's often very, very chaotic, but fun. If you enjoy product marketing, that's so much fun. So typically a release cycle involves getting your product page or website or ads, all of that up and running. If it's a new feature or a new product, you would need demos and webinars to be ready. You're going to help the sales team with sales enablement at that point. You'll see how you're enabling your multi-channel approach across PR, media buying, marketing, social media, emails, all of that together, right? So you're essentially coordinating all of that, owning some of it, delegating some of it, project managing all of it, right? So that's how a product release cycle looks like, which is, again, a very important responsibility of a product marketer. Now, the last bit of it, right? What does a typical day look like? What are you dabbling as a product marketer all through your day? And split between these three funnels. So on the awareness front, you're looking at ads, yours and competitors. You're looking at content and blogs. You're looking at events that you can exhibit at, speak at, participate at, attend, or someone on your team can attend. Right? You're creating some awareness via mediums like social media, etc. You're focusing on conversion as well. So you've created a landing page, you've created some websites, you're trying to see how the conversion can get better. You're working with your marketing ops person on getting that A/B testing tool right and getting the right reports and so on and so forth. And similarly, sales readiness, videos, webinars, case study, all of that you're dealing with on a typical day, depending on which day of the week it is. And the last bit is engagement, of course, right? So a product marketer's job or responsibility doesn't end at acquiring a customer. You are often involved in driving your user communities as well. Think of, if you look at some of the most popular products in the B2B SaaS space, they're often driven by a very powerful community, right? And a lot of effort goes into that. And product marketers typically play a huge role in making sure that the community thrives. They may not be the community manager. They don't have to necessarily be the community manager. They may be somebody else who's managing the community. But a lot of intel, a lot of depth, a lot of substance often comes from the product marketers and product managers that drive the community. So ensuring that there is enough engagement in your user communities, hosting your own events with customers, with partners, all of that. And again, engagement on social media, the kind of product update emailers that you send, so on and so forth, keeps a product marketer busy. So with that, I think we are towards the end of the presentation. I would love to take some questions if there are any. And but before I go, oftentimes people have asked me, what are the books that you recommend? Honestly speaking, I read all of these books a lot after I took the role of a product marketer, but nevertheless, they were super, super helpful. I would recommend, if you have interest in product marketing, these are some of the books that you might enjoy reading. With that, yes, I'm happy to take any questions that you have. For those of you who would like to reach out to me directly, my email is available here, and I'm fairly active on Twitter as well. You can send me a DM. My DMs are open. And I hope this was valuable. And if it was, please tweet out. Thank you so much.
Prabal, I think there are some questions that have been asked. Can you please close your presentation so that you can go to the private chat box and take the questions?
That is what I was about to do. 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So Nishant wants to know, how important is it to understand product nuances to sell in SaaS? Very, very important, Nishant. Like I said, when you start things off, it might not sound like a big deal. If you are selling a product which you think is a commodity already, think about it this way. Talk about softwares that do transmail, like transactional emails, for example, or SMS APIs. They are very, very commoditized software spaces. But then if you look at the top players in that market, you understand how they value the nuances, how they care about that in the kind of approach that they have to go to market, all the way from their messaging to events that they do, to the community that they have built up. All that actually stems from that fact. It's very, very important is what I feel. Okay, I have a lot of questions, so I'll take them quickly. I hope that answers your question, Nishant. If not, please feel free to reach out to me later. What's your most important hack of retaining the SaaS customer? I'm not sure about the hacks, but I think the best way to retain a SaaS customer is having a product that solves their problem and offering them support to be able to use the software best. Providing, as a marketer, see, there are things that you can do as a marketer and there are things that you cannot, right? So let's talk about what you can do. You can ensure a good onboarding experience. You can offer good training. You can offer ways for them to use your product very easily, okay? And how you make that happen is what differentiates you from a good product marketer, from an okay product marketer. So how do you make it easy for a customer to use your product, stick with your product? How is your messaging impacting how they use your product? All that is very, very important from a marketing standpoint. Of course, if your product is not doing a good job of what it claimed to do, there's only so much that you can do, right? So yeah, I don't have any hacks, I'm sorry. So Vishnu asked, how do you handle overlap between content, brand, and product marketing? That's a good question. And I think I touched upon that in the first few slides. When you are a very, very small company, and also depends on the DNA of the company, how you're structured, how you're positioned, what's the perception of your company in the market, your content would sit either close to the brand or the product. Over time, you would want to do both. You would want to run content marketing for your product, talking about use cases and all of that. And then if you're building a brand as well, over time, you would create content that is around your brand. And there are so many examples of companies having done that. And that essentially is around, could be anything. There are companies that have done it around remote working. There are companies that have done it around their tech culture. There are companies that the kind of developers they hire, the kind of engineers they have on the team. There are companies that have done it around the community that they build, right? So their content around community itself. So depending on how your brand resonates, what are the values, what are the ethos of your brand, and what do you think will stick on the wall? Companies have done everything, every possible content format that you can think of to build their brand-led content. Can you help us understand how we should define referral marketing campaign? That's a separate discussion altogether. There are some companies that have done it really, really well. There are a lot of companies that do it, but it's not very successful. A referral marketing campaign first only works when your product is already getting customers and that cycle, that flow has been sorted. I wouldn't really even prioritize referral marketing early on for others in the room before you figure out your own growth engine. But yeah, for those who have cracked that problem and want to look at referral as another source of user acquisition, I'm happy to take it separately. I don't think it's important in the context of this discussion, and we're short on time. But yeah, don't get into referral when you've still not figured out your marketing engine, growth engine already. Can digital marketing beat in-person sales in B2B software? I'm not sure if I get that question correct, Himani, but we're comparing digital marketing and sales. So digital marketing can create that funnel for your sales team to convert. So from a marketing qualified lead to your sales qualified lead, that's how typically B2B software sells, assuming it is low touch. But again, the question doesn't have a lot of context for me to give you an appropriate answer right now. Sushant is asking, a single product can have different benefits to different clients. Absolutely. How to market a SaaS solution with the unique core benefits with different use cases for every client? Well, if you have a different use case for every client, it's tough. But if you're able to create those segments, for example, let's say you have a solution to create communities, right? You can create, let's take example of, let's say something like Zoho Connect, which is like a internal social network. Now, different kind of companies would use it differently, right? I mean, you cannot sell it the same way to a real estate company the way you would sell it to a uh, to a f- to a software company or to a manufacturing company. So what typically marketers do is they create content buckets targeted towards uh, different different groups. So for example, you would have a software, but the content would be crafted talking to a particular audience. So if you're talking to the real estate industry, you would use the same product, you would talk about it, the features, the capabilities, the use cases for that particular industry. That would be your one page. Okay. It may evolve into a microsite as well, but let's start with a simple page. If you're doing content for a different industry, okay, let's say leather industry or something completely different, travel and hospitality, right? You have the same software, but the way a travel company would use your software would be very different from way a real estate company would use your software. So in that page, when you create that page, whether you use it as a landing page for paid ads or you just want to create it for organic traffic, SEO, all that, you use that narrative to talk about the benefits of your product, and that's how it works. I hope that answers your question. I think that's it. I had a poll that I had put up. How many of you are a product marketer, a product manager, and figuring it out? So I think it's a fairly equal split of 30, 35, 40% each. So good that we had an equal balance of people in the room. Another question that has come up from Rahul, for products which do not have a significant who do not have significantly different value proposition than the competitors, especially in early stages of product, what does the marketing strategy hinge upon? Okay, that's a good question. As much as, and I would like to accept that as much as we talk about differentiation, it's not very easy to differentiate early on because oftentimes the teams or the companies, they're themselves figuring out what would the product look like, who would it serve, uh, what features would it have, would it go in a niche or not, and that's what is called pivoting, right? You've seen companies pivot early on several times, sometimes till the time they get to the right fit. Every single company that we hear of has had this success. We sometimes forget that they went through a lot of changes and iterations to get there. So it's not necessary that you would have the right differentiation to go to market early on. And that's the reason why getting that product marketer is very important. Even before getting your first digital marketer or someone who will do your SEO, all that. Because what would you do SEO for? You're still not sure who's your customer. You've not crafted that story narrative very well, or you've not tested it. So yeah, that's, I think, is important to understand that what are you building, who is it for, and then build that narrative on that. So until that time, that question doesn't have an easy answer. Let me say that. So over time, you figure out who are you for, and there's so many examples of how companies have pivoted, have gone niche in a market, and have had success. So yeah, that's what I would say. Ashwin Kumar is asking, is paid campaign the right method for getting the first 10 or first 100 customers? I mean, I won't really say that spending money to acquire customers is the wrong thing. If it works for you, it helps you test something early on, great. It depends on the kind of approach that you have. Some founders or product marketers or managers would want to go to market using alternate routes or methods, maybe via word of mouth, maybe via uh, a strong source of referrals or their ecosystem of friends and external network and all of that. While some would say that, okay, I would rather go anonymously, put up a value proposition, run some ads, get some customers, and see how it works. That's an approach that both of these approaches work, and both have failed depending on what you're trying to sell, which market you are in. So I won't really discard that paid campaign is not the right way to get your first 100 customers. But oftentimes we've seen that a lot of companies, reach out to those whom they feel are a good fit. They try to set up a meeting, a call, depending on, of course, the deal size. If I'm selling you a $5 software, there's no way that I can set up a meeting with you and give a half-an-hour demo and things like that, unless I'm trying to bring in something which is completely revolutionary, and I feel that I need to test the bed early on. Okay, Stuti is asking, how important is talking to customers in your role as a product marketer, and should you do it or should you have someone else do it? I think that's a very good question, Stuti. I think oftentimes engaging with customers is severely downplayed in a B2B SaaS space, especially self-serve markets. It's often believed that you can run product marketing completely as a back office team. Well, you can. It's not that you cannot, and a lot of companies are doing it. But the value of talking to a customer, sitting with her at an event, at a booth, at your office, at their office, gives you a completely different perspective. I mean, sometimes, I'll tell you from my experience, just sitting next to a customer and seeing her use your product, okay, clears so many myths in your mind that, oh, why did she not click there? I thought everybody would click there, but she's not even anywhere around there. She's looking at something else. Why did she not create a task first? Why is she creating a poll first? Or whatever, This happens so often. So it's indeed very, very, reassuring to see your customers use your product, to talk to them. But yeah, one thing that I would not suggest, and I'm not a big fan of, is changing your product roadmap, the course of your product growth development based on what customer is asking. Because the moment you start stepping on that path, then you are basically tweaking your product to solve a customer's need. And then somebody else will ask you to do something else. And the third person will ask you to do something else. Fine. If you see a larger alignment with your product roadmap, with a group of customers, there's no harm in moving in that direction. But you just cannot keep changing or keep building for a customer. And honestly, I'm making it sound rather easy. It's not, especially when when your product is making $10,000 a month, and somebody comes in and says, hey, you know what? I love your product. Why don't you build this for me? And here is $100,000. So it becomes very, very tough. And there's so many interesting stories on the internet that you can possibly listen to of how founders have had this problem of, facing that, and how it has oftentimes changed the course of the product development as well. So yeah, that's a good question. With that, I think, how are we doing on time, Ashwin? I'm not sure, but I don't have any more questions that I see, Nishchay.
Yeah, because there are
anything else.
Yeah, there are some overlaps happening between questions. So the questions that are asked once, they're getting asked like over and over again. Also, we got the results back from the poll that we conducted in the beginning of the session, which is like whether you are a product marketer or a product manager, or you're still figuring it out. And we have the results with us. And I'm sure after this session, some people who are figuring it out will get closer to what they want to do. So that way, I think the session was great. And yeah, questions are still coming in, and people are still asking questions. But I think people really got some idea of what they came here for. And for that, we have to thank you here, Prabal, for this amazing talk.
Thank you, Nishchay, for having me on the summit. And I hope it was worth everybody's time on a Friday evening. And like I said, I'm available on Twitter and email if you have any questions. Happy to help. And yep, that's it. Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you, Prabal. Okay, guys. So this was the last session of the day, but the day is far from over, really. Check out the other sessions we are hosting at the reception. Of course, as was the case with the physical event that we conducted, we have arranged you to connect with and network with all the speakers that you saw today and amongst each other. So just ask questions, like share your thoughts, and just do your thing. I mean, that's what we are here for. And yeah, go to Twitter and tweet anything that you want, and with the hashtag the Maker Summit 2021. And I'll see you tomorrow for more sessions from.